We can start now. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for the speakers who are here already and the interpreters. Um, Today's agenda, we can go through it. Maybe for everyone, because the speakers will be speaking. If you're not speaking, you can put your microphone off or mute it. Then if you have a question or you have a comment, you can drop it in our chat box or in the chat box. We will read it after. And please continue to name yourselves, the country you are from. This meeting is going to be recorded for minutes and reference after to gather all the inputs and the suggestions that will be made for future use. Thank you to the interpreters who are here, people from different regions that joined, allies of the Women Caucus. For this moment, maybe few of us can introduce ourselves so that we know each other before we start. But please let us use the chat box to introduce ourselves. Remember, we have interpreters interpreting in French, in Spanish, so that we can all engage and make these trainings meaningful. We are glad. I'm called Scovia Mpumuza, and I'm the one moderating this training. But we are glad for everyone who joined. Just to know, this is a fresh training, pre-COP, for everyone to understand what is COP, what are the processes, how do the negotiations go. That is, we'll dive into it in a few minutes to come. But before we dive into it, as we continue to introduce ourselves in the chat box and renaming ourselves so that we can know who to call on to or who is speaking, we are going to see what the hoster of this training is Women Caucus. So we want to know, what does Women Caucus do? Maybe there are a few people here who don't know what is Women Caucus, what do they do? So let us first get a very short introduction of who Women Caucus are or who we are, so that we can dive into today's agenda. Thank you, everyone. So to make it believe about us, about CBD Women's Caucus, we were founded in 2008, and we serve as a recognized platform under the Convention of Biological Diversity, which is the CBD. Those are acronyms that maybe will be used, but when we say CBD is the Convention on Biological Diversity, and for all women and girls to advocate for their rights in biodiversity-related decision-making processes to all levels. And maybe many of us have known us in the policy side or sector, but we have other things that we tackle, or other sectors that we also tackle. And what we do, apart from the policy and advocacy, we also have community building. Because we are a community already, when we say Women Caucus, you feel that you know that is a community. So we have community building. And right now in this fresh training, we are building our community. Then we have capacity development for us to get to know what can we do from the global level to the ground level, what is done from the policy level to the implementation. We have knowledge production, awareness, and outreach. Those are other sectors of the Women Caucus that we base on. We are not only in the process and advocacy, but also we even go to the ground, because the members, individuals and organizations of the Women Caucus are from the grassroots, others are from national level. So we don't stop on the policy level only. Then the objectives of this training, as you saw, we said, we also do awareness and outreach. If that is one of the things that we focus on, and that's where we came up with these fresh trainings. We have had the first session, and today we are going to have the second session. So the reason for these trainings, for us, it is to facilitate the exchange of knowledge among new and existing members, because you may be in the Women Caucus for very long, or maybe you've been in the CBD processes for a long time, but how can we exchange with the new members, with those who are starting the process afresh? So exchanging the knowledge among new and existing members to enhance their skills of active participation at CBD COP16 for everyone, for every member, for every woman, for every ally, for every organization, and for every individual to participate together, engage together, and expect the same results from COP16, with the aim of strengthening our collective advocacy for gender justice. So as I told you, the program, how it was, we started on August 9th. That was the introduction of the CBD. Like, what was CBD? We will send the recording after the last session of our program, which is on 6, as you see. But then we discussed and shared a lot of learnings, rich engagements. What is CBD? Who are they? What are its bodies? What do they do? And how is gender considered or taken as a CBD? But today, mostly, I'm going to give you part of the learnings that we got from that. But today we are going to see what is COP16. Like, when we say COP16, what is it? Does it have the bigger word of it? Is it an abbreviation? And then how is the negotiation process? How do they work? We see people during COP or meeting SEBSTA or SBI moving up and down, but what are they doing when they move up and down, a room after another? And then we will see the agenda or provision agenda items that will be discussed during the 2 weeks that will be for COP16. We will understand that, and we have different speakers that are going to help us to understand more. We have people who have been in the process for so long that are going to comment, also add on to what our speakers will be discussing, so that we can have a rich and meaningful participation and engaging session today. And to give you what we discussed in the last session, those who were not there, the one of 9th August, this is a brief, but you can go in the notes, and then we will send the whole recording of the whole day, of the whole 3 sessions. But as I told you, we discussed about the Convention on Biological Biodiversity. We saw when was it adopted. If I pose that question in the chat box, I hope you can, like, if I say when was it adopted, hopefully you can be having an answer. Adopted in 1992, but that doesn't mean that that is when it started or it was put in force. So by 1993, I know some were born, others were not, but then it was put in force in 1993. So far, 196 parties are members of the CBD. They gave us that background, and maybe the speaker who will conclude, the last speaker will tell us why 196, or maybe why there are many countries in this world, why only 196? Anyway, she won't give that details, but let us ask ourselves. So 196 parties are the ones that are members, except US and ORIC. And then objectives of this, or what we got from the benefit of the session that we had, we got to know what is its objective, why was it started, what does it do. Then conservation on biological diversity, because it was extincting, and then sustainable use and components of biological diversity, fair and equitable sharing of benefits are arising out of the use of genetic resources. So that was its role, and that is why it was put in place. And it has, as the years have come, for the 16 years, now we have a lot that we shared, and there is a lot that is being put in place for us, for the world, for you and me to conserve the biological diversity that is remaining. And then we shared about gender in the COP16. We shared about gender and biodiversity. We shared about gender-based inequality that is happening either on the global level, on the grassroots and national level. We shared about gender plan of action, and maybe we will speak about it today for just a summary. And then we looked at COP16 decision on that is 15/11, especially on target 22 and target 23. And then we looked at the agenda achievements. What have we achieved since all these years, especially when we remember the milestone that happened during COP16. The objective of this was to invite parties to implement a gender plan of action in synergy with gender plans because they have tended to be different and people navigate into them in different ways, and they should be together for us to have or to achieve what we discussed or what was amended at that time with other relevant multilateral environmental agreements to support and promote the gender responsive implementation of the upcoming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. So how is the implementation going, both at the global level, national level, maybe at the grassroots? Is it gender responsive? Do you include it all? Because we are from different organizations and we are individuals working on different platforms. Are we gender responsive in every aspect of what we do? Then encouraging parties to appoint and provide support for a national gender and biodiversity focal point. These are the people who have been appointed or maybe nominated by the parties or countries recently. There are those who haven't nominated them. There are those who have them. But our question is, all of us, do we know that we have these people at our national level? Do we make use of them? Do we engage with them? Do we connect with them? Do we engage in every discussion that the country is making? Are we involved in every process so that together we can make this successful? Thank you so much. That was a summary. As I told you, we will send the whole recording of the 3 sessions. But I'm so grateful that everyone is here once again. Thank you everyone for joining. If you just joined, this is the pre-COP training, fresh training session hosted by the Women Caucus. So thank you for joining. A warm welcome. If you have any question, if you have any suggestion, put it in the chat box and please rename yourself and the country that you are from. So because of that, well, I'm going to share a little bit of the agenda. I already shared it, but introduction to COP16. We will look into the negotiation process, and then we will see the negotiation agenda. There are people, maybe some of us, how is the negotiation process different from negotiation agenda? That is why we have the speaker today. She will differentiate the two, and then we will know how they are different and how we can engage, because we want women to engage, participate during COP16. And because of this, maybe it has been a hindrance to some because we don't know the process, but this is an opportunity. So let us use it. Let us be engaging as we can, ask questions as possible, please engage so that we make this a meaningful participation and get ready for COP16. So before we dive into the real topic and welcoming the first speaker, I'm requesting that, if possible, everyone can put on your camera and then we get a group photo. I'm going to, for a minute, to stop sharing the screen. Yes, maybe we will keep the cameras on because you all look very good. Thank you. Um, okay. One smile. Okay, the last one. All right. Thank you, everyone. Please, if possible, keep the cameras on, if possible. Yes. So for that, we are going to receive our first speaker. And thank you again for the interpreters. If you can engage using French, you can engage using Spanish, you can engage using English. We have different interpreters. If you go to the icon and just click on interpretation, you will get the different languages that you can use. Yes. I'm going to share the screen and then I'm going to welcome our first speaker. So expectant, Shruti Ajit. Hopefully I pronounced the name well. Yes, a member of Women Caucus and from Women for Biodiversity. So you are most welcome, Shruti. I'll share the screen now.
Thank you, Scovia. So maybe once you share the screen, I thought we will start off. Um,
Okay, a minute. Okay.
so yeah, thanks, Scovia, for the lovely introduction. Maybe just to like kind of get everyone kind of excited about what's coming up next, I thought we'll start with a bunch of trivia. And I will require Amelia. So you will get this. The term biodiversity refers to what? There are four options. The number of forests in a country, the variety of weather patterns in a region, a total number of animal population, variety of life, all life forms on Earth, including plants, animals, um, including plants, animals, and microorganisms. So that's the first question. The second question is kind of jogging you back into the first training session, which is what is one of the objectives of the Convention on Biological Diversity? And the third question is that every COP, which is Conference of Party, has a theme. What was the theme for COP15 held in Kunming, Montreal? So a little bit of, kind of mixing it up. I see a lot of different answers coming in. We've got 9 responses. We've got a bunch of, 15 responses. And everyone's doing great, except for the last one, which is very exciting. So maybe another couple of seconds, and then I will reveal the answers to you. Um, so I think everyone's got number one right. Everyone's, oh, now we are getting mixed answers for number two also. And we are getting very mixed answers for number three. So very, very interesting. Um, Maybe I will now reveal for those who has yet to. So this is essentially the first one is correct answer is variety. What does biodiversity refer to? It means variety of all life forms on Earth, which is great. Um, and the second one was the objective of one of the objective of CBD, which was to share the benefits of genetic resources fairly, which is the correct answer. The third one was interesting because I wanted to, like, these are terms that are used in a lot of these UN bodies and different conventions. And the correct answer was ecological civilization, building a shared future for all life on Earth. And in harmony with nature, with a lot of people also responded to, is actually the tagline for the 2050 vision for the Global Biodiversity Framework. So, with that, I hope you had a little bit of fun, learned something new about this. Um, we are now going to move to a little bit about COP and what is happening in a little bit about COP16 specifically. So, COP is Conference of Party. It's held once every 2 years. So, the last one was the 15th Conference of Party within the Convention on Biological Diversity. And this was held in two parts, one in Kunming, one in Montreal, and it happened in 2022, and that's where we have the global biodiversity framework, which is adopted. And now, which is the 16th edition of the Conference of Party within the CBD, we have it in Cali, Colombia, from 21st October to 1st November, which is over 2 weeks. So every COP kind of spreads over 2 weeks, and it has uh, 31 agenda points. We will go through those agenda points at the later part of this workshop itself. This COP's theme is actually peace with nature. If you notice on the logo also for the COP, it actually says, I'm sorry, it says it in Spanish, but it means peace with nature. So this is also combined with the 11th meeting of COP MOP for Nagoya Protocol, Cartagena Protocol, and the fifth meeting of COP MOP. MOP is serving as a meeting of parties. So there's a lot of jargons being thrown. So Conference of Parties serving as meeting of parties is for Cartagena Protocol, which is the 11th edition, and the fifth edition for the Nagoya Protocol on access to genetic resources and fair and equitable sharing of benefits. So that's the little um, um, maybe a trivia or like tidbit about what is happening and what is COP16 right now. The next slide, Scovia, if you can. Now, this is essentially where we have, I will not go into all the details, but these are not the only objectives. This is some of the many objectives that we want to get out of COP16. One is that after the Global Biodiversity Framework was adopted in COP15, the next stage is to look at the state of implementation of this framework. So how does that happen? It happens with the alignments of the framework within the national level through the National Biodiversity Strategies and Action Plan. So all the countries now are in the process of reviewing their NBSAPs or updating their NBSAPs or making the whole new NBSAPs which reflects the Global Biodiversity Framework. And they are supposed to submit it before COP so that we are able to see what exactly have each of the countries adopted, prioritized based on the Global Biodiversity Framework within their NBSAPs. The third aspect is looking at the monitoring framework. We are hoping to have the monitoring framework for the Global Biodiversity Framework adopted during this COP. The fourth one is looking at adopting the updated resource mobilization for the Global Biodiversity Framework. These are all very technical terms. I don't want to go deeper into it. We will have more and more. We will have workshops that will go into more of these details. These are just some of the things that are being discussed. And I think Amelia will focus on the agenda point where she will give you a little bit of context of what these are, what is monitoring framework, what is resource mobilization. And another objective is to finalize and operationalize the multilateral mechanism on fair and equitable sharing of benefits from the use of digital sequence information which is DSI, on genetic resources. So these are some of the objectives that we are hoping that the countries adopt and CBD adopts, and the countries then start implementing and having these. So we are looking at a lot of these things happening within this COP16, which is happening in Cali, Colombia. The next slide, please. So, as I said, COP is usually spread over 2 weeks. This is a general overview. This is to highlight, sorry, oops. Technology, it's okay. Well, it's bringing us closer. Well, I'm not going into the details of each of this, but I just want to highlight that it's not just negotiations that happen at COP. So you have um, COP, MOP, which is what the 2 weeks are for. But at the same time, there are multiple things that are happening simultaneously while negotiations are happening. So you have your women's forum, we will have the gender day. We also have various action zones, and then there's a GBF pavilion, a side events space altogether, different workshops. So it's a chaotic space, but also an organized chaos. So, and for the first time in within CBD, the COP16 actually has two zones. One is the blue zone and one is the green zone. The blue zone is where all the negotiations, discussions, side events, some of the side events are happening, whereas the green zone is where, and it's also called People's COP. So they're hoping to bring civil society groups, various stakeholder groups, including women, youth, indigenous peoples and local communities and businesses, academics, whole bunch of people. And they, in the green zone, it's meant for them to present the kind of work that's happening, to share and to learn from each other. So the green zone is specifically for any kind of those activities, but they are both in different parts of the city in Kali. I'm not going to go into the details too much, but right now, this is essentially what the overview of COP16 looks like. Something to notice is the Women's Forum, which is great for us because this is a space where we will be able to also kind of push forward and discuss and negotiate about gender responsiveness within the GBF. But also at the same time, we have various other activities that are going to happen as and Women Caucus are part of it. So we have side events, we have the Gender Day, and a whole bunch of things that are lined up, which will happen once we all get engaged very actively and are there. We hope to see most of you, a lot of you there, and we hope that you join us so that we come in numbers and we are able to collectively bring forth some of the issues and some of the positive stories that is emerging for gender responsiveness within biodiversity conservation. So I think that's just basic summary of what COP16 is going to be. Maybe the next slide, Scovia. So just want to quickly see if there are any questions, any questions in the chat box, or you can raise your hands.
There is a question, Shruti.
Mhm.
Anna asking, is the Women Caucus events, will they be in the blue zone or in the green zone?
Actually, it's a mix of both. So you have side events that are happening, but also within the green zone, we have the Women's Hub. Um, we will shortly share it in the information for which we will shortly share with everyone who are part of the Women Caucus e-list and WhatsApp groups to contribute, and if they want to share aspects of their work or even just participate, all information will be shared shortly by our coordinator, who will provide all these information right after this workshop. So it's a combination of both Blue Zone, where we will be also sitting for the negotiations, and we will be having our own bunch of side events, but also within Green Zone, where we will have the Women's Hub, where we will be working on this. Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, the GBF pavilion, if I'm not wrong, is the secretariat. If I'm not wrong, but yes, that is the correct answer, I guess. I will need Amelia's if it is. Yes, yes, it is.
Okay.
So
There is a
maybe we.
question for in French, not French, in Spanish. Amaria, maybe you can help out.
Yeah, the question, Shruti, is in which zone the Gender Day is going to happen? And similar is when the Women's Forum is going to happen, which is the Gender Day.
So where's the question? Sorry. So the gender day is going to happen in the Blue Zone. Amelia, I will need your help to give me the information on this. And the also maybe Amelia, if you can respond to this. Um,
Yes, sorry, Shruti. The Gender Day or Women Forum, as it is being called now, is happening on October 25th. The agenda is being developed in collaboration between the Secretariat, Colombia as the presidency of the COP, and the CBD Women's Caucus. So it's still open, and we are developing the agenda. It's as it is going to happen in the Blue Zone, and also answering Anna's question about the events happening in Blue Zone. Only those accredited and with the credentials to attend the Blue Zone are going to be able to participate. And yeah, I think those are the questions about the Blue Zone. Yeah, the Gender Day zone.
I see Ruth has raised her hand. Maybe that's the last question, and then we can take more questions because we'll.
Yes.
So Ruth.
Ruth, if you are speaking, you're on mute. Okay, maybe we will. Okay, she's saying she's unable to mute. You can write
Ruth,
your
can you?
question in the chat box and then we will read it. Okay, you are here. Thank you.
Okay, finally. So thank you so much, Women's Caucus. I hope you can hear me correct, right?
Right.
Yes,
All
we
right.
can. Loud and clear. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much for this convening. Unfortunately, I missed the first session, but I'll catch up with the recording. So my name is Ruth Agala. I work for the Youth Coalition for Sexual and Reproductive Rights, and our work majorly is on sexual and reproductive health and rights globally. So we are part of the Feminist Action and Climate Justice Action Coalition, and we are trying to foster synergies with other feminist movements globally, especially the indigenous ones, to advance our work on climate justice, because we have a pillar on climate justice. And that's what we are doing right now. So we have a collective commitment that we are supposed to co-implement together with some global feminist organizations who work on climate justice. However, my organization works on SRHR advocacy globally. And I hope this is not a daft question, but I'll still ask regardless. So I was wondering if you could share with us, because for me, I am new in the climate justice space, but I am well versed with SRHR advocacy and some basic components on climate justice. And I know we have COP29 that happens, so the COP that happens regularly on a yearly basis. And this year we have COP29 that is happening in Baku. And I'm wondering if you could also share with us maybe some of the nuanced similarities and differences between COP16 happening in Colombia and COP29 happening in Baku, just for context purposes, so that if we have people who are like me, we can be on the same page. Thank you so much.
Yes, just a quick, because it was covered, I'm guessing, in the last one, which is the Three Rio Convention. One was on within the Rio Convention, three conventions were built. One was on climate change, one was on combating desertification, and one was on biological diversity. So the climate change one, which is what you are talking about, is what is happening, and it happens once every year. Whereas the CBD COP happens once every 2 years, and it's on biological diversity. However, Ruth, there is one of the agenda points which I don't know if we're going to focus today, but like because of the limited time, but there is an agenda point that looks at the linkages on biodiversity and climate change, and it is something that is being discussed even within the CBD framework right now. And with your expertise, you can help us provide your comments as we go into policy after these workshops. So thank you, Ruth, for that. Maybe we can now quickly move in. I don't know if that was enough, but maybe we can move on to the next one.
Yes. Thank you, Shruti. Thank you, everyone, and keep dropping your questions and your comments in the chat box. And then maybe a takeaway from this, we have to ask ourselves, how can we now engage in the process now that we know what COP is? As we move to part 2, then when we say COP, we are speaking about negotiation, and it is a process. It is not a 1 day or a 2 day. Thank you. Ameria raised your hand, yes?
Sorry, Escovia and Shruti, just to address one remaining question, like I'm sure I shared in the chat the link for those interested in register to the COP, and we need to clarify that the CBD Women Caucus is the platform where civil society, women from civil society and community-based organizations engage in the negotiations. We are not part of the secretariat. We do not grant the registration. You have to go through the official channel, the official Secretariat CBD web page, and register yourself, either by registering your organization or getting an organization that is already accredited to give you the pass or help you getting the pass. But that is like the official channel, and we cannot jump that. Even us, within us, we have to register through accredited organizations. I sent in the chat the link where you can find the official information. They request you to send an official letter, no, in a letterhead format with your bylaws, with evidence that your organization is actually related with the implementation of the convention. No, like there are some steps for all of us to follow to be able to participate in the Blue Zone. And this is the same for all of the UN processes, right? It's not that they are hindering women's participation or they are blocking us from being there. It's just because it's a matter also of the material reality. Like it's within a space, within a convention center that can allow certain number of people, and they have to distribute the quotas, among all of the type of participants. So it's also not possible to have all of us there, but you can apply and register, and then the secretariat will tell you if we already reached the quota in general, not like all of the participants to the CBD, or if there is still space, which I think there is. Sorry, Shruti, for taking this time, but it was a floating question.
Thank you, Amelia. I think that was very important to address because I think participation is one of the key important aspects of being able to engage and provide our this. So it's important to also address how do we participate, how do we be part of COP16. So quickly jumping into the negotiation process, we are also kind of a little over time. So I'm going to run through how what happens to um, discussions and negotiations that happen. We have 31 agenda points, some of which we'll go through, but it could be from it depends on what the agenda points are. And for that, um, if you go onto the CBD and the COP16 websites, the CBD Secretariat is working on finalizing those documents, and they will be onto the website. And that's the next workshop that all of you guys will also go through. So, what? So once those documents are up, then we start the actual work actually begins pre-COP. Scovia, if you can move on to the next slide. Oh, we have a trivia. I'm so sorry, I forgot about it. Oh, so quick, another round of questions. If everyone's up for it. So we'll take like 2 minutes. What is the supreme decision making of the Convention on Biological Diversity? The COP, Jeff, SubSta, or the Secretariat? What's the main role of SubSta? Which is to fund biodiversity projects, to organize biodiversity awareness campaigns, to enforce biodiversity laws in member countries, to provide scientific advice and recommendations to the COP on biodiversity issues. And what's the primary role of SBIs? So to review and promote effective implementation of the convention and its protocols, including monitoring progress towards target, to develop new biodiversity laws, to conduct biodiversity research, and to handle public relations and media outreach for CBD. Maybe another 10 seconds. We already see that. Lots of stuff happening. And I think this is also a recap from the previous training workshop. So this is not a test to put you on the spot, but it'd be good if you could look at if you go back to the older recordings and see what has been shared and kind of get yourself acquainted towards what is being discussed within this workshop, because not every workshop is the same, and each of them have the intention of building so that you have a clear flow of what is happening. So we hope that you are able to go through this and do it. So maybe we can end the poll. And so the first answer is COP. Correct answer, we got few for SubSta and a few for the Secretariat. For the second one, for SubSta, what is the main role? We've got mostly right, which is to provide scientific advice and recommendations to the COP on biodiversity-related issues. And the third one, also we have mostly right, which is to review and promote the effective implementation of the convention and its protocol. With that, we will move on to how negotiations happen within COP. So how decisions will be made, like I said, the actual work starts pre-COP, where the documents are being finalized and it will be up for people to review and prepare well in advance before coming even to COP. So what is happening this year, because Colombia is the host country, for Colombia, they have presented four thematic axes that they are prioritizing, which is addressing informality and curbing environmental crimes associated with biodiversity laws. The second one is territorial and intersectional integration and coherence for biodiversity management and climate action. The third one is boosting the economy towards productive and competitive transformation based on nature. And the third one is finances for the collective management of marine, coastal, freshwater, and terrestrial territories. So this is basically where they are prioritizing and they are going to finalize. The Secretariat is going to put up these documents, which we'll all have to look at so that we can collectively provide our interventions well prior to COP. And this is where the actual work will begin in September as soon as the documents are up. The second part, Scovia, the next one. So when we are in Cali, Colombia for COP, the first plenary session will be the opening of COP. It'll give us a quick run through of how we are going to plan for the next 2 weeks, what are the agenda points that are being discussed, and then the negotiation begins based on one agenda over the other. So just to say that plenaries will happen and is open to everyone. It's meant for the ones who are accredited, of course, who are in person. But these plenaries are also sometimes and actually all the time screened on their official CBD's YouTube channel in 6 different UN languages. So people who are not able to join in Cali, Colombia can also actually follow the discussions happening within the plenary. Now, what happens is now we have 31 agenda points. The plenary first goes through those documents, the negotiation begins. Different countries will make their interventions within each of these agenda points. Sometimes, and if imagine this is almost 190 countries, 170, 190 countries. So you have so many countries, you have observer groups who are now also like trying to negotiate. There will be times when people will not come to a consensus. What happens when that consensus does not happen? So when consensus does not happen, the agenda itself moves to a contact group. And then countries, sometimes these contact groups are open to observer groups, which is observer groups, which is women, youth, IPs and LCs, academics, observer groups, which cannot negotiate but will be able to follow through and be able to help with the negotiation. But so these discussions which does not build on consensus goes into contact groups based on the agenda points. Just a quick thing, just a quick point to note, even for Women Caucus, we do have a seat, but till the time that a party does not support our intervention, it does not get it does not get not adopted. It does not get, so we always need to seek for party support when we are putting an intervention. So, and that happens with all observer groups. So we need to, when we put in our intervention, we always seek party support for this. So that's essentially a quick understanding of how first plenary, it's the first round of discussions that happen, and then things go into agenda points, go into contact groups where countries are now divided into the various contact groups that they follow, agenda points they are following, and the negotiations continue. The next slide, Scovia. Now, in the contact groups, there are discussions and proposals where each country presents its positions and different proposals are discussed. And then they are trying to build a consensus on agreements where based on which a draft decision is drawn up. Next slide, Scovia. Then we have the second and the third plenary where the whatever happened in the contact groups gets finalized. It comes to the second and the third plenary where it's shown to everyone to see if some of these changes and proposals are being reflected in the document or not, and then negotiation continues. And then a second draft is formulated based on the discussion. So with that, the last slide, next slide, Scovia. Then we finally have the fourth plenary and the closing, which is where we have some of the decisions that the final draft based on these multiple rounds of contact group, plenary, and then we have the plenary, the final drafts, which then formally adopts within this final plenary, it adopts the final decision. So we are hoping to have the monitoring framework here being adopted. Like I said, some of those objectives, we are hoping to see some of these things being adopted here within this COP16. So I think we will. There's also a very, very nice, lovely. In fact, I took help from the COP Colombia website where they've put a very lovely document that outlines this entire process. And it is in Spanish, but hopefully if it'll be able to help some of you understand it much clearly. So this is what I shared in the last 4 slides is basically represented in a graphic way. It's in a lovely document called CBD in a Nutshell, which was created by the Global Youth Biodiversity Network. And it's still very, very relevant, which talks about how to look at documents. And what are these documents? Because a lot of these documents have these numbers and names and different variations and versions that keep coming out. So what are the things that you need to look out for? What are the things that you need to read? And to make interventions within those documents are things that is very absolutely necessary. Yes, sadly, we only have this version in English, but we hope that you are able to see and get a sense of a little bit of it. So, okay, quickly, we will put our time frame right now. We want to do a negotiation exercise here itself, and I have a line for you. And I have a few ground rules. So you have to raise your hand to intervene. You have 2 minutes, or actually, no, 1 minute to intervene. And if you feel like this is a correct interpretation, we will adopt this. But if you have a problem with this statement, you have 1 minute to intervene, and then we will see how this works. So maybe do anyone want to start? Please raise your hands and then I will call upon you. Anyone wants to begin? Do you think the loss of biodiversity impacts everyone equally? And anyone? Joyce, over to you. You have 1 minute. Joyce?
Joyce, if you are speaking, you're muted. Maybe you can go to Beata or Olympia.
Okay.
Okay, I think I can.
Días a todas.
Yes, Berta, and then I'll come back to you, Joyce. One
Muchas
minute.
gracias. No impacta, sí, no impacta, o sea, de forma por igual a todas, sino de forma diferenciada, porque hemos demostrado a través, digamos, o sea, de la ciencia y nos ha permitido demostrar, digamos, o sea, con datos relevantes que el impacto, digamos, a los ecosistemas, la biodiversidad y que de ahí se derivan los bienes naturales comunes, impacta de forma diferenciada a las mujeres, a la niñez, a los jóvenes, por ende, o sea, no es igual, o sea, de hecho, para todo el mundo, ¿sí? Eso sí es de establecer, digamos, enfáticamente que nos afecta de forma diferenciada. Por ende, las medidas y las soluciones, o sea, tienen que estar, o sea, de cara a esa afectación, o sea, de hecho, de forma diferenciada que sucede. Me quedo ahí, gracias.
Thank you, Berta. You have your justification, but we didn't see. Joyce, then Olympia, and then Fian, Maria. And then we're going to close this exercise a little bit.
Yes.
Joyce, over to you. Wait. Sorry. First Joyce, and then Olympia,
Okay,
Fian,
okay.
and then Maria.
Okay.
Joyce, can you unmute yourself?
Yes. Yes, I oppose the statement. The loss of biodiversity does not impact everyone equally because women, young people, other marginalized groups like indigenous people have different priorities and needs. And so some component of the biodiversity, when there's loss of some components of biodiversity because of the difference in vulnerability, then it will impact them differently. So some of those groups have economic vulnerability, and that vulnerability is different to men and women. And so the loss of biodiversity impacts different people differently. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Olympia, 1 minute.
Yeah.
Sí,
So
buen día. La pérdida de
Sorry,
biodiversidad.
Olympia, Fian, then Maria. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay, I continue. La pérdida de biodiversidad afecta a toda la humanidad, eso es definitivo, pero de manera diferenciada. Al igual que muchos procesos mundiales, las comunidades en situación de pobreza, en situación de marginalidad, tienen efectos más graves cuando sus recursos naturales son afectados. Las comunidades indígenas, cruelmente, que son muchas veces las que están al cuidado de la naturaleza, son quienes viven los impactos de manera más grave cuando se pierde esta naturaleza. Gracias.
Thank you, Olympia. Maria. Sorry, Fian, and then Maria. Fian, over to you.
Okay, so, hola, voy a hablar en español también, así yo sigo la dinámica. Bueno, claro, yo quería decir también que es de manera muy diferenciada porque hay poblaciones que dependen directamente de recursos naturales y de la biodiversidad para sus medios de vida, como son los campesinos y campesinas y pueblos indígenas. Y si hay pérdida de esa biodiversidad, de plantas, etcétera, pero también, por ejemplo, por campesinos y campesinas, la diversidad de semillas nativas. Si se uniformizan, etcétera, pues pierden su autonomía, su resiliencia, y se vuelven más vulnerables, ¿no? Entonces, las poblaciones urbanas dependen menos directamente de la biodiversidad como medio de vida, por ejemplo. Pero la gente que vive en el campo está directamente impactada. Gracias.
Thank you, Fian. Maria, last one, and then quick reflections.
Vale. Un gusto conocerlas y pues también comparto, y ya haciendo la última intervención, comparto con mis compañeras pues todas sus respuestas. Digamos, aquí en Colombia principalmente pues también destacamos que estos impactos son desiguales y pues también dependen de varios factores como ya fue mencionado, la ubicación geográfica, los niveles socioeconómicos, la dependencia de recursos naturales que especialmente son de aquellas comunidades que están en estrecho vínculo con la biodiversidad, aquellas comunidades que son de zonas rurales, que son comunidades que son miembros de comunidades indígenas, que también son campesinos y que son los más vulnerables principalmente a estos impactos y que principalmente los afecta en su diario vivir y en sus medios de vida debido a que ellos dependen principalmente de la biodiversidad para su alimentación y principalmente también para su conexión en términos culturales. Gracias.
Thank you, Maria. I think most of you have said the same kind of justification. And it's very, very important that this is true. Just a quick this. However, while you've given me the justification, any of you have not given me an alternate text to this. So this essentially is what happens. I know your justification, but I don't know what you're proposing. So a lot of times, even though we are able to provide justification, we also need to provide alternate text proposals within the document that we are discussing. If we don't do that, the CBD Secretariat will not know what exactly we are proposing, even though we have justified it. So, and also to keep in mind that sometimes we have 3 minutes, max 4 minutes, which is a luxury. And sometimes we don't even have that space to negotiate. So based on this negotiation exercise, these are some of the things I hope. So this is essentially what was the intention for this negotiation exercise, for you to understand that while we have so many of these, which are very similar justification, a lot of similar things, sometimes with the limited time for negotiating as women we have, it's important that we also keep some of these tips and tricks in mind. So keeping this exercise in mind, and also understanding that countries and CBD will not have the whole day to fix and fixate on one agenda point, and they're also like trying to finish and adopt and all of that. So it's important that these are some of the few tips and tricks, which is that because we have like maximum 3 minutes, or sometimes we don't even have that intervention, we have to be very, very clear and short with our inputs. And that includes alternative text. If we do not agree with that text, we need to provide alternative text when we are proposing on the floor. And for that, we have to be very clear as to what alternate text we are proposing, and we have to ask for party support, because without party support, it does not get reflected in the document. Then I said time is of the essence, so we have to be very, very clear, very, very important to also then that helps us prioritize what we need to say. And the justification can come in multiple ways through various other forums, but time is of the essence. So it is something that we need to keep in mind when we are thinking of negotiating and when we are thinking of this. However, sorry, can you go back? However, one of the things that you can and definitely should do, as all of you are coming and being part of Women Caucus, is to continue engaging with your country's focal points, the gender focal points, and the various delegates who are there to push for some of the things that we are asking for, and to support us with inside the negotiating room and outside of it. So the justification, the largest justification can actually happen when you are trying to have these conversations with your country's focal points and delegates and gender focal points, to tell them that this is what we are proposing and we need you to support us, or we need you to support us by providing this proposal yourself on the floor when you are presenting as part of your intervention. So sometimes it's where the countries support us when they give us party support, but sometimes countries also include that within their interventions and prove and give us the support by doing the intervention themselves. So it's important that we start. If you have not started your engagement, you should start right now itself, pre-COP, and keep sharing what is happening with Women Caucus, what our core priority areas are, what are the things that we are trying to focus on, and start your engagement right away, and hope that it continues. It's important that we have to keep engaging with our country's focal points and delegates who are there, because they are very key and instrumental with the negotiations. And of course, apart from that, you also need to build synergies with other groups. So you have the youth group, you have the indigenous peoples and local communities, you have the civil society groups. So it's important to kind of build synergies with them so that we kind of reiterate what they are trying to propose, or they will reiterate what we are trying to propose. And those synergies are there, and we are not working in silos, but together to build the strength of inclusive and more democratic decision making. So I think that's the end of it. Um, Maybe two questions because I think we're running out of time. So like, and any questions?
You can even drop your question in the chat box and we will read it. Okay. Okay, I see the question in the chat box. Ameria, would you help out on interpreting that for us? Maybe Christina.
I will read the question and I let you answer it, Shruti. She is asking where could they found the Caucus statements to study them? I don't know if perhaps you want also to ask Tiffany and Berta to open their mic and share.
Yes. So where do we find the position statements? Amelia has been sharing a spreadsheet with all the agenda points that are being discussed for people to sign up into the various agenda points that they have expertise on. So we request you to be part of that because it's a collective work that we will be working on, and the policy team will start building on that. And we will have a collective statement that gets built on these agenda points. In the meantime, you can also go through our previous statements, which we can share which is also on our link tree. But we can share with you in the various previous discussions in Substar and SBI and COP, what these positions have been for Women Caucus, so that you get a context of what have been our asks and what have been our demands. Whereas for this, we've already formulated these policy groups who are going to collectively build on and create these statements. And it's not just one or two people. We are hoping that everyone participates equally as part of this. Who are the other ones? Amelia, sorry.
It is Tiffany and okay, Ben. Yeah, it is the learning, I think, that they shared in the chat box. But Tiffany, you can, for seconds, you can open your microphone and share.
Sure. Thank you, everyone. I apologize for not turning on my video today. It's an inconvenient time of the day in the morning for me. But thank you so much for holding this session and for allowing us this chance to connect with each other. I raised a point in the chat box today about some other work that I'm going to be doing. I'm going to COP with a few hats on, if I can say this. We will have some work that's being done in coordination with the G20 country leaders and with the G20 working group on women's empowerment. And we will have a new policy brief that will be published just before COP16. And it's allowed us to raise this issue of gender and how women and girls are being trained, what access they have to education, what access they have to careers, and what their work is like within fields that are related to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And of course, biodiversity research and careers are part of the puzzle. So we've been able to use what data we have, but also see what information is limited. And so I would love to connect with people who are working on those issues and perhaps have projects to collect information from women and girls studying and working in these fields of biodiversity research and management. Just while I have the floor, I would also say it will be wonderful to connect for many other reasons. I will be supporting the Pacific Island countries in our negotiations at COP16. And so the countries have significant interest in supporting Indigenous peoples and local communities and supporting women and youth in particularly in communities who are very dependent on biodiversity, who have deep ancestral connections with biodiversity and Indigenous knowledge and traditional knowledge about biodiversity resources. So again, thank you for this chance to connect. It would be wonderful to connect with this group both before and after COP16. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. I think we can move on to the next segment because we are running out. We have 45 minutes. So I'm going to give back to you, Scovia.
Yes, thank you so much, Shruti. This was wonderful. Part 1 and part 2. Who is more excited as I am? And something that I've learned, everyone can be a negotiator. People were proposing and opposing the statement. And the trivial, the statement to negotiate, this was very insightful. And because we are speaking of COP16, and that is where the negotiation, warmness and hotness and coldness happens, let us go to part 3 that is going to be led by another speaker, and we dive in and see what is the agenda, what are the negotiations agendas, so that we can all understand how will we engage, but from knowing how it is done, but now how will we engage in the process. You are most welcome, Amelia.
Thank you so much, Scovia, and perhaps we can advance because coming to this third segment of today's call, we also have another poll, and this is the last one of the day. So it is a bit to help us linking what we discussed last in the first session of the training with today's reflection. So first question is, why is it important to include women in biodiversity conservation efforts? I hope we have 100% right answers in this one. Second question is, you reviewed it last session about which is the particular target within the global biodiversity framework that addresses gender equality and women's empowerment. And last question, what is the primary purpose of the GPA, as we call it, the Gender Plan of Action, that was adopted in the COP15, at COP15? So yeah, hopefully we get correct answers to the three of them because we all know about this topic. And just as soon as it was my turn to speak, a cat jumped into my tab, into my desk. So hopefully you don't see him. And while you answer the poll, also to let know Berta that I'm gonna address your question as soon as we go into the discussion of the actually this segment of the policy agenda of the COP. Couple more seconds to let people engage with the poll. And I can see the answers from here, so not all of them are 100%. That is strange, but let us stop for now so we use our time wisely. And I guess that you can see the answers now, right? The question number 1, why is it important to include women in biodiversity conservation? And the correct answer was the first option, because they play a critical role in managing natural resources and also because possess traditional knowledge, specific ecological traditional knowledge. Second question about which is the gender equality target that we, as we call it, or we also call it the target 23. So it's a bit weird that someone answered target 15, but it's okay for this. After today, please remember that is target 23, the gender equality target, that actually speaks that the whole framework should be gender responsive. So if you will use that as a justification of your answer, then we can give it as correct. Like all of them should be actually gender equality targets. And what is the primary purpose of the GPA? The correct answer was the second option, the one that says support and promote gender responsive implementation of the GBF, right? So whenever your government asks you, but how do you want us to implement Target 23? Like we don't really know where to start, how to do it. Then you just take out your gender plan of action and say, you see, here is a concrete roadmap, where to start, what to go next, and how do we finish. And I hope you enjoyed this trivia. It was actually a bit fun while we were preparing them, and now seeing also the results. Now then let's go to the content of this last segment of today's session. And by let me start addressing Berta's question here in the chat. She is asking, how could the different initiatives around COP16, the different initiatives coming from women's groups, from networks and so on, can be unified in one position or as a one voice? And yeah, if we go, Scovia, to the slide of the agenda, yeah. Just to remind us all that that is actually the role and the mission of the Women's Caucus. No, the Caucus is a platform. It's how to explain this, like it's a space that congregates the different organizations, the different networks, the different women's movements from all around the world. And our role is to facilitate exactly that that process of coming together and finding the similarities, the converging points where our demands, collective demands are. And that is why we're organizing this series of trainings that are open to the public in general, particular women and allies, because we want people to know about what the Caucus is, how are we intending to work, and also that is why we are constantly inviting you all to be members of the Caucus, because we also have, and we actually are going to start next week, our internal process to start analyzing the documents and start defining the policy position. So we are in a very good moment, very good time for all of those interested in shaping those collective positions, in joining the Caucus, but also being active members of it and the different processes. And having said that, let us come back to this agenda of the COP. Shruti mentioned that there are 31 agenda items for COP16, from which 20 are the policy related. Not like the first 7 are kind of if we look at this call, like a similar to the conference of the parties, at the beginning we have the welcoming, we presented you the objective of the session, the agenda of the, like the different points and topics we wanted to discuss. Those were like the introductory items of today's session. The same is for the COP. The first items of the agenda are those about presenting credentials, identifying who are the governments, the representatives in the room, like which is going to adopting the actual agenda. Because could be the case that some government, some party to the convention could say, I don't want to discuss this, I want to discuss this other thing. That is unlikely to happen, but could happen, right? Or they could ask to discuss these topics in different order, for example, no? But those are the kind of the like the procedural items of the agenda. The policy agenda is really big, and that's why we have this slide, and it's on purpose that is just filled with text, because this is how the agenda of the COP feels like it's too much. There are 20 policy items that are going to be reviewed under this process that Shruti explained to us. Like in the first plenary, they're going to have the first reading of all of them. Then for the more contentious one, because there is no agreement about what they are discussing, which are the ways forwards they are identifying, there are plenty of them going into the contact groups, right? And then going into a series of steps for the negotiations that Shruti walked us. So you can imagine the process that Shruti explained happening in parallel for the at least 10 of these items, which is already a lot also. So our idea is that you could get engaged early in advance with the different items of your interest, of your expertise, and to get familiar with what is the topic about, but not only what is the topic about, but also what has been already discussed. Because one important part of the process for us to remind is that these particular 20 items have already been discussed in the intersessionals, in the substas, in the SBIs, in the working groups. So it's not that we can come up with proposals that have been already discussed and perhaps agreed in favor or agreed against. So it is important in terms of using these 2 minutes that we have in plenary or during the contact groups as wise as possible. And that will depend on how effective we get familiar, how familiar are we with the process. And that's why if you could help me dropping in the chat the links to the COP16 documents, you can find for now there the agenda, and in the next session of this training we're going to go deep into the web page, because that is our kind of one-stop shop to go and get all the resources that you need during COP. From these 20 agenda items that we are aiming to address them all as Caucus, there are particular topics that the parties themselves have identified as the priorities or as the most contentious ones, because there are like game changers, we could call them like that. In particular, item number 8, that is the one where the governments, the countries are invited to present their updated or revised MVSAPs. Item number 9 on digital sequence information on genetic resources, where parties are going to discuss and agree by COP16 on a multilateral mechanism to distribute the benefits, monetary and non-monetary, that are coming from the use of the digital sequence information. And they are agreeing, not if they have to do, because they already agreed they have to, but they are discussing how. How are we going to actually identify who is benefiting from the use of this, and many more. I'm going to go into those details in the next slides. But just to highlight, the contentious topics are number 8, number 9, number 10, that is officially called Mechanisms for Planning, Monitoring, Reporting and Review, is the item under which the negotiation of the monitoring framework is going to happen, and so on. You have 20 items to go through. Here in the second link that Shruti, thank you for sharing, in the chat box, you find a document that we have prepared, aiming to support our members, but also our allies, where we have identified the background documents for these 20 items. Usually all of them are in the 6 official languages for UN, but we only brought the the links to Spanish, English, and French for these items. And the documents that you will find on this table is that the ones coming out from the substats, the SBIs, and the working groups. These are not the official working documents for COP, but most likely are going to look like that because these are the results of the latest results of the latest step on the negotiation, right? So if you can start reading them, you are already going one step ahead in your preparations towards COP16. So please make use of that document and get familiar with the topics, with the wording, with the positions, and which are the expected decisions to be made during COP16. And now I'm gonna just go quickly through the 5 agenda items of COP16 that we have seen or heard from the government secretariat Colombia as the presidency of the COP, as that have identified them as that's the priorities of COP16. So if we can go to the next slide. The first one I would like to share is about the MBSAPs. And thanks to Christina for preparing this slide. It has been really useful to keep using it in the different sessions. Here we know that what the governments have to do is to present their updated or revised national strategy or action plans based on how are they actually going to implement the GBF for the next 6 years, right? And here we also note that the GBF itself says that for the framework to be implemented successfully, it will depend on if it's implemented through a series of principles or considerations, one of which is the gender equality and empowerment of women and girls on reducing inequalities. So the idea here is that during these months in preparations to COP, and for those, maybe some of you have already engaged before, but the idea is that the MBSAP process engage actively women's organizations, gender experts, so they their insights, their priorities, their proposals are embedded into those national strategies and plans. The other point that we are trying to make here towards the negotiations at COP16 is that apart from the process to be gender responsive, the content of the NBSAP should be gender responsive. No, like the process is important, the consultation is important, but also what are those national targets and how are they going to be implemented in a way that go beyond no harm, but actually contribute both to conservation of biodiversity, sustainable use of biodiversity, and gender justice. And that's why another argument or another point of our advocacy is trying to demonstrate how when they invest or when everyone, not just the government, but when the different organizations, when everyone acting on trying to implement the GBF, bets for gender equality, that can also enhance environmental outcomes. And other action point that we have as Women's Caucus is actively trying to bring together the different gender and biodiversity focal points so they stay together as a community of practice, as a space where they can learn from each other, because we know that they might be the ones leading or the ones responsible or tasked with the responsibility of overseeing the gender provisions into the NBSAPs. The second item that is crucial or also highly contentious, as I was already advancing, is item 9. If we can go to the next slide. on the DSI fund, the Digital Sequence Information Fund, and it is a bit complicated, this one. And I'm not an expert on this. I'm just sharing some information I got from the gurus for all of us trying to get a glimpse of what is going to be discussed on this item. And as mentioned, they are trying, first of all, to identify or build a mechanism where the monetary and non-monetary benefits of the use of digital information of genetic resources can be condensed, identified, and then those responsible or those that are being benefited already share back to those that are the responsibles or the holders or the ones that actually conserve the biodiversity and the genetic resources from which the digital sequence informations they are using are coming from. And this multilateral mechanism will have a fund, like we could call it a bank, like it might be easier to understand that way. Like it's gonna be a pot where the money, speaking particularly of the monetary benefits, the money should be brought into, and then how that money is going to be disbursed. So there are a lot of options on how the money is actually going to be received. Like is the money or the contribution, as they are calling it, contributions to the fund, should be determined with an amount, a percentage of the earnings. Should it be through the one context, important context to be shared here is that the contributions as they are looking like have to be made by the private sector. Now what they have identified is the ones that are benefiting commercially of the use of digital sequence information is the private sector. Therefore, private sector in general have to contribute to the fund, that then the money that is in the fund has to be shared back with the parties, with the governments, where the genetic resources these companies are using are from, the species, the plants, the animals they are using, or the original, they were original to that place. So there is the negotiation around this is how the contribution should be done to the fund. Like, should there be a mandatory amount of money that should be every year contributed or directed to the fund? Should be voluntarily, just by encouraging the private sector that is using DSI to give whatever they want into the fund. And then the other part of the negotiation is, once the money is in the fund, how is that money going to be distributed? Should be distributed to the 196 governments or parties to the CBD? Should be allocated to the mega diverse countries? Should be allocated to the global south? Should be allocated with those with more indigenous peoples population? Should be allocated to those with more intact areas? Like one question is how the money is gonna be in the bank, and the other question is how the money, once it is in the bank, is gonna be distributed. Is it gonna be allocated just because it has to be allocated, or the governments have to apply by creating projects, and then someone will review those projects and will say, yes, it's a good project, then I'm gonna give you the money, or someone will say, no, it's not a good a good project, then I'm not gonna give you the money. And then other question is that the indigenous peoples, local communities have made really clear is, wait a second. If you have access to these genetic resources and the digital sequence information, is because us, for millennia, we have been shaping biodiversity, we have been conserving biodiversity, and also because the traditional knowledge associated to that, we have identified which is the use, the purpose, the potential, the possibilities of these genetic resources. And that traditional knowledge have come from us, no, like we are the generators, we are the keepers of that. So therefore, we need, we should receive also money from this fund, because at the end or at the beginning, we were the ones actually creating or conserving biodiversity. So there's a lot to be agreed still, because all of these options are on the table. There are positions in favor, against, even where the fund is going to be hosted. Is it going to be in the JEF? Is it going to be with the World Bank? Is it going to be within the Secretariat of the CBD? Where is going to be this fund administered? And then next slide, please. The item on the monitoring framework. Perhaps people are more familiar with this one. We know that by COP15, when the GBF was adopted, in parallel, its monitoring framework was also adopted, but let's call it an interim version, no, like a draft 0, because the decision said that it was going to be further developed in between COP15, COP7, and COP16 to be finally adopted in its full version, COP16 to start to be in use. Here, the monitoring framework, our main demands are, first of all, that the whole monitoring framework is guided by a principle of gender disaggregation, that the different indicators for the 23 targets and the 4 objectives include as appropriate, and when the indicators are related to people, disaggregation through gender, ethnicity, age, so that we have a more nuanced data about biodiversity and the different targets. The other one is, you might also know that Target 23 is one of the 3 only targets that do not have a headline indicators as of now, because at COP15, many of the targets didn't have headline indicators by then, but in the intersessional period, the methodologies and the negotiations advanced at some point, at the point that the different targets, or if you look at the monitoring framework as a chart where you have the targets and each of them have indicators, during these months after COP15, that chart started to be more complete. And there are 3 targets in particular that is still without headline indicator, which of Target 23 is one of them. And then one of our main advocacy point here is that 23 targets should have a headline indicator. This is important, definitely. Some others could have other opinion, like this is relevant, yes, but it's more important implementation. So there's a lot of room of discussion also within us about where to focus our energy, right? And so it's like, because yeah, I won't go into our discussions. Those are the internal discussions. But just to mention that these are the priorities that have been already identified, or that have been identified at this point, because the priorities could shape based on the new members and the new conversations that we are going to have in the following months. And the third advocacy point here for this item is the reinclusion of the gender plan of action indicator that was already in that chart during COP15, but then it was dropped out during the intersessionals because it didn't have a methodology. Now it has one, so it's moment for them to put it back, right? So there are different situations, elements to be discussed among this, as well as enablers, no, to the monitoring frameworks. Yeah, we're gonna have the document ready, really beautiful with all the indicators, and then what? Like, are there actual capacities to implement and monitor? Are there actually resources to document all the actions? Are there actual resources to implement the GBF, and then resources to document the implementation? No, like, we also need to give some steps back and consider what are the actual priorities to stop biodiversity loss. If we go to next slide, and I'll be more quick, sorry, Skovia, because I see that we are almost on time. Item 11, resource mobilization, is also a critical point that will be highly discussed during COP16. The updated version of this resource mobilization strategy, this is a parallel document also to the GBF. Once the GBF has been agreed and the governments identify which are those urgent actions that they have to implement at all levels, then other conversation that was happening in parallel is how are we going to actually implement it? Like, we need resources to implement, we need technology, we need knowledge, we need money to implement this GBF, right? So the strategy to mobilize all of those resources is going to be adopted now at COP16, has been reviewed in the intersessionals, and the final conversation is going to happen at COP16. Our main points here that we have been highlighting in the intersessionals are, first of all, the urgent thing is to close the financial gap. Now that they have identified already how much money is going to be needed for the implementation, let's get it done. Now let's get it the money is there, there is money in the world. We just need to directly direct it to the implementation of the GBF. But in parallel, there's no point in investing trillions in conservation if we are allowing that other sectors of the economy, of the production, keep doing and generating biodiversity loss, right? So this is also within this discussion, is like redirect money to positive actions towards biodiversity, but also stop pumping money to those activities that are creating biodiversity loss. The topic of direct access and unconditional funds for indigenous peoples, local communities, women and youth to lead conservation action, that the whole resource mobilization is based on and guided on a human rights-based approach, meaning that it's not only about creating a lot of new instruments or just getting money and donations from whichever or whoever, but that all of that money has to comply with a human rights-based approach. And it's not only about creating millions of protected areas, but that all of these actions under the GBF have to respect and secure human rights. And also that not only the market and not only biodiversity credits are the answer to, but that there are other types of regulations and actions that we should also pursue in parallel or even more than the market-based approaches. Next slide, Escovia. I'm not succeeding in being short. I'm so sorry. Item 14, about the Article AJ, new program of work. This is also critical discussion that will happen. In the first session, you heard from and learned from Christina about the different bodies within the CBD, that we have the Conference of the Parties, that we have the sub-study SBI as established and institutionalized spaces for the negotiations, but that there are other type of bodies called the working groups that deal with particular topics within a time frame, right? The Article AJ working group was established long ago, and it kept going on over the years, that it started to seem that it was institutionalized, but not necessarily. And that is one of the discussions that is going to happen at COP16. Like, should the working group on AJ be transformed into a subsidiary body? Should it stay as a working group, and then for how long? No, that is one of the negotiations. Should AJ be included as a standing item on the substats or on the SBIs? So all the time there is a discussion about Article AJ, which is related to indigenous peoples and traditional knowledge. And in parallel to that discussion about the institutionalization of the AJ, we're going to discuss also about the new program of work, because either if it's established as a subsidiary body, if it stays as a working group, of if it is embedded into the Substar SBIs, they have to also start agreeing on what actually there are going to be the items or the discussions that they will have once the body is set up. So this is how this new program of work is looking like, with 8 particular elements of discussions, all of them relevant. I just want to bring your attention to number 7, which if you go through the documents that we shared and you look how the proposal of this program of work is looking like, if you go to the component 7, you will see that there is a particular reference to human rights defenders, that it's completely linked into the gender plan of action provision about women environmental human rights defenders. Next slide. Sorry, Scovia. This is the last one, I think. Yeah, the Q&A. I try to be as general as possible, but also giving details. And I guess my answer to if there is any question will be, join the caucus, come to the policy discussions, and there we can have a more in-depth discussion about these items and which are going to be the caucus positions towards each. Thank you, Scovia. Back to you.
Okay, thank you, Maria. And thank you, everyone. When I go through the chat, there is no question. Anyone that has a question before we go to the conclusion, we are left with 9 minutes, so I can give out 2 minutes if you have a question or any comment that you want to make. Yes, Belta? Yes. You can open your mic.
Muchísimas gracias. Concretamente, nosotros hemos venido diciendo, o sea, que hemos logrado identificar, bueno, yo pertenezco a la Red de Mujeres en Conservación de Latinoamérica y el Caribe, y estamos, digamos, en un proceso para asegurar nuestra participación en la COP. Y dentro de nuestros temas, digamos, de interés es que hemos logrado identificar que la mayoría de nuestros gobiernos a nivel de Latinoamérica y el Caribe, estoy hablando, no nos están convocando, digamos, a las organizaciones que trabajamos directamente con la parte de ecosistemas, biodiversidad, bienes naturales comunes y sociobiodiversidad, no nos están convocando como partes interesadas en la construcción, o sea, de nuestros planes y también, o sea, la parte de la revisión, o sea, de los informes que van a presentar en la COP. Entonces, desde este punto de vista, inclusive a las organizaciones que hacemos, y hablo el caso de El Salvador, a las organizaciones que hacemos Contraloría, sí, nos excluyen, o sea, prácticamente completamente de estos procesos y se convierten, digamos, en la mayoría de países en procesos cerrados. ¿Cómo podemos hacer, digamos, para llamar la voz y la atención, o sea, sobre esto, que los procesos de la construcción de nuestras estrategias, planes e inclusive los informes que van a presentar, o sea, de hecho, nuestros países se abran, o sea, que sean democráticos y participativos, porque de esa forma, digamos, estamos garantizando una serie de principios establecidos en el marco global, o sea, de la Convención Marco de Biodiversidad, ¿sí? Entonces, ¿cómo podemos hacer desde el Caucus, o sea, para ayudarnos a incidir que nuestros países, o sea, nos tomen en cuenta, digamos, como partes interesadas y que logremos desde ahí hacer incidencia para, de alguna manera, hacer hincapié y llamar la atención que hay que incorporar, o sea, lo que es la perspectiva de género, el enfoque de género en esos planes que estamos, o sea, construyendo a nivel, o sea, de hecho, de país. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Yes, Amelia.
Thank you so much. Gracias, Berta, por compartir. Y justo es una situación que hemos escuchado bastante dentro del propio Caucus. Shruti incluso podría compartir sobre una encuesta que ella junto con Cristina estuvieron liderando respecto a la participación no solo de las mujeres, sino de la sociedad civil, ¿no? En la adaptación, en la revisión de las estrategias. Y es una realidad triste a nivel global, ¿no? Que por la presión, entre comillas, de sacar rápido la actualización, entonces los procesos no están siendo participativos, pero, eh, pero tienen la presión, ¿no? de que los países deben ahora presentar sus estrategias en la COP. Y aunque eso no es una excusa, porque el acuerdo fue, ¿no? Lo que está planteado en el GBF es que sea bajo una perspectiva de toda la sociedad, una perspectiva de derechos humanos. Entonces, eso siempre ha sido como una parte de los cuestionamientos y por eso mencionaba, ¿no? En que lo que buscábamos nosotros es que sea género responsiva en el proceso y en el contenido, ¿no? Que no solo se trata de hacer consultas o de abrir una página web y decir cuáles son tus opciones o qué es lo que quieres ver ahí, sino llevar adelante un proceso de ir a los espacios donde están las mujeres, ¿no? Y escucharles. Hay algunos ejemplos. Durante el SBI pudimos escuchar ejemplos de Malawi, de Colombia y de Canadá sobre cómo estaban buscando hacer esta actualización, pero nuevamente no es como la versión desde las compañeras, compañeros de los gobiernos y otra quizás la visión de las compañeras en los territorios. Esto pues solo como para decir que desafortunadamente no es el caso de El Salvador exclusivamente, sino que es una tendencia que se está observando, que se ha estado cuestionando desde varios grupos y quizá, Shruti, si puedes compartir la liga a la encuesta que estuviste liderando, los resultados, porque sobre esa encuesta se plantea seguir construyendo evidencia, ¿no? De que el proceso no fue abierto.
Thank you, Amelia. Gracias. Because of time, I don't see any question in the chat box. We can move on to the end of this session once again. Thank you very much for joining. The summary, maybe to give a little view of those who joined maybe 30 minutes after, 20 minutes after, dropped out because of the technology and network. We looked at the introduction of COP16, COP16 being the convention of parties. The 16th maybe convention. So that is 1 to up to 16. So we saw that we looked at our objectives and what it is. We looked at the negotiation process. We had the time to get the chill and the quiz. There, I hope everyone enjoyed. If we had time, I would ask everyone to raise a hand, maybe tell us what you learned, but please drop it in the chat box for the moment and I will read as I conclude. But thank you so much. And part 3 was the negotiation agenda. And this is where we were getting depths. How many agenda items? When I looked at that list, I was like, is it 2 weeks or 2 months to do all those items? But then we have 2 weeks, some will be parallel. So that is why I urge everyone, please go into those documents, get used to them, prepare yourself so that together we can participate and engage during COP16. Thank you, guys. And then that marks the end of our session today, but it is today. It doesn't mark the end of the whole fresh trainings that we have. After understanding CBD, knowing about gender and biodiversity, and now here is COP16, we understanding the negotiation process and the agenda items. Now we're having the last session that we are going to hold on 6th September, that is in 2 weeks' time. Please don't miss. We will be looking into the documents. We share different documents during these sessions, and maybe when you go through them, you won't know how to navigate them. So don't miss this session because we will be seeing how do we navigate them. Because when Shut was sharing, she said that we can justify the statement, but then we have to propose some texts in the document. So here we will be navigating the document so that when we are negotiating or attending the contact groups for the first time, seeing how people are negotiating, you won't miss out. You will know where people are discussing the session in. So please don't miss. Prepare yourself. Block your calendar for those 2 hours on September 6th, and let us all meet there. Lastly, I see, I don't know if it is a comment or from Beata, maybe Amelia will look in as I share this. Please don't forget to join us. I shared the link in the chat box. You can join as an individual. You can join as an organization. Remember, Women Caucus is a space, is a platform for every movement, for every one of you and me to join and participate equally. Equality starts with us. Yeah, thank you so much. Amelia, is that a question from Beta?
There are goodbye comments. Yeah, and thanks.
Okay, I have to learn Spanish. Yeah, thank you, Beta. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Please, you can follow us on our Twitter, Instagram, on our Facebook, all the platforms that Women Caucus uses. Just put Women Caucus, and we'll be together in the process. See you all on 6. Thank you to interpreters. Thank you to everyone. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.